Hello, and welcome to our Mystery Hour. Today we are going to be delving into the dark and twisted nightlife of late 19th century London, England, wherein lies one of the most baffling mysteries of our time. Who is Jack the Ripper?
There were a bunch of murders in Whitechapel during the year of 1888, but the 5 most poignant murders are considered the canonical 5, which consisted of Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. Now, Mary Ann Nichols was discovered on August 31st, 1888, at about 3:20 a.m. when this guy Charles was on his way to work, and he ended up stumbling upon a bundle. When he got closer, he was like, wow, this woman is either dead or drunk. She was dead. So it was too dark at that time for them to see that her head was almost completely cut off. So he decided to leave and go to work, leaving her to later be discovered by a constable. Annie Chapman was discovered around 6 a.m. by a guy named John Davis, who called for a crowd to come and see her. And similar to Mary Ann Nichols, her throat was cut and her skirts were thrown over her head. But the difference between these murders was that her stomach was cut completely open and her organs were thrown over her shoulder, and a part of her uterus was missing. So the crowd decided to go to work, leaving her body unaccompanied, leaving for her to later be discovered by a constable. The night before she died, Elizabeth Stride was seen with a man, and this is considered to be the first sighting of the guy who is said to be the Ripper. Now, the person who saw them reported him as being about 5'6", clean-shaven except for a mustache, wearing dark trousers, a dark overcoat, and a sailor's hat. Around 1 a.m. the next morning, her body was discovered by a steward who came across her body on the way to work and lit a match and noticed that her body had been mutilated, just like all the other victims so far. Catherine Eddowes was found in a pool of her own blood. Her skirts were thrown over her head and her intestines were thrown over her shoulder. Her throat was completely cut, meaning that was the reason of all the blood on the ground, and her earlobe was taken. She was found in a position where she was holding her abdomen, almost as if to close up her wound. Mary Jane Kelly was the youngest and the prettiest of all the Jack the Ripper victims, and she was found, unlike all the other victims, in her own bed. The tops of her thighs and her stomach had been cut off and set on a table near her bed, and her abdomen was emptied of its contents. Her intestines were used as almost a pillow behind her head, and her breasts were cut off. One was placed by her head, and one was placed by her feet. Her face was hacked up to the point where she was unrecognizable.
Although the murders themselves were gruesome enough, one of the most shocking facts are the letters that were sent into Scotland Yard in droves.
During these murders, there were many letters sent in from both concerned citizens and pranksters, but only a select few were thought to be from Jack the Ripper, including Dear Boss and The Letter from Hell.
Dear Boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. Ha ha. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers, just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this before. I got all the red ink off my hands. Curse it, no luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha.
Originally dated September 25th, 1888, the Dear Boss letter was thought to be done by pranksters, until 3 days later, an earlobe was found sent in with another letter after the murder of Catherine Eddowes.
Mr. Lusk, sir, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. The other piece I fried and ate it. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you only wait a while longer. Signed, Catch Me When You Can, Mr. Lusk.
The aristocrats believed that Jack the Ripper was one of them, but because of all the spelling errors, it confused both them and ripperologists.
Who was he, though? Whose mind was stone cold enough to brutally slaughter 5 women? What was his motive? And why these 5 women in particular?
Although we will never know the true identity of Jack the Ripper, there are a handful of suspects ranging from royalty to regulars, including Prince Albert Victor, Dr. John Williams, a physician, Jacob Levy, a butcher also known as Leather Apron as mentioned in the Dear Boss letter, or even a woman by the name of Mary Piercy. Some of the more abstract and unlikely theories claim that Lewis Carroll, Vincent van Gogh, or even Jesus was the Ripper. Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence and Avondale, was believed to be the Ripper because not too long ago 2 letters were discovered that mentioned that he had gonorrhea, or gleet as it was referenced in the letters, and that he was driven insane to the point of murder. In the first letter, he mentions that his gonorrhea is only noticeable in the morning and he's been taking 4 pills a day, and in the second letter, he mentions a surgeon, or his doctor by name, he's just known as Roche, nothing else. But he asks his surgeon for more pills to get rid of his gonorrhea. This theory began in the year 1970 when Dr. Thomas Stowell proposed the theory to some of his colleagues and said that because Prince Albert Victor contracted gonorrhea, most likely from a prostitute, that he was driven to the point of insanity and murder, that he just decided to murder the 5 prostitutes of the Whitechapel murders. Even though there isn't much evidence pointed towards Prince Albert, the idea of him being the Ripper would have been totally scandalous in 1888. A more convincing suspect than Prince Albert Victor was Joseph Barnett, the former lover of the final victim of the canonical 5, Mary Jane Kelly. They had met a year and a half before her murder in April of 1887, and then they eventually moved in together at 13 Miller's Court, where Mary Jane Kelly was found murdered. Joseph Barnett wasn't a suspect until author Bruce Paley proposed the idea to some of his friends in the 1970s, and eventually wrote a book in the 1990s titled Jack the Ripper, The Simplest Truth, where he described Joseph Barnett and how he related to not only the physical profile of Jack the Ripper during that time, but also the psychological profile as well. The theory goes that Joseph Barnett was tired of Kelly being a lady of the night, so he decided to murder 4 other prostitutes to try to scare her out of prostitution. Once that failed, he decided to kill her off last, which would make sense due to the end of Jack the Ripper's rampage in 1888. Some supporting evidence to the theory that Joseph Barnett was actually the Ripper was that ginger beers were actually found at 13 Miller's Court by the police, and that they were also mentioned in the Dear Boss letter earlier in the murders. Also, the door was locked from the inside, which could have only been done by someone with a key such as Barnett. And the last and final and most loving of all pieces of evidence, Mary Jane Kelly's intestines were put behind her head as if it were a pillow, and this could be seen as a loving notion done by Joseph to have her be comfortable in death, but we'll never be sure.
Well, that's all we have for today's Mystery Hour. So, who do you think it is? Prince Albert, Joseph Barnett, or maybe somebody we didn't mention? Well, the world will never know.